Welcome to the Red Rose Film Club, a movie podcast that examines the wide world of cinema through our perpetually lefty pinko commie soy boy cuck Antifa super soldier filter. But more specifically, we love movies and want to create a podcast that would appeal to the disparate tastes of our liberal, leftist, socialist, communist, Marxist, and Leninist friends. Red Rose Film Club is for leftists of all stripes who don't know what to talk about at parties other than movies and politics. My name is Craig. I work in public education and am passionate about social justice and workers' rights. And I'm with...
Hey, I'm Hal. 2024, I'm switching it up and taking it back to the basics. I'm a socialist trying to grapple with our world by reflecting on it through art, theory, and the will of the people. And I am wearing a leather jacket right now, and I am not sweaty for the first time in 6 months.
Nice.
Great news, everyone. So, Craig.
Yeah.
What kind of pop culture are you going to be into lately?
Watched a lot of movies lately. A couple new ones, a couple oldies, but also with the new ones, which I understand that you might have seen as well. But I saw Conclave, poke thrillers. I love a good poke thriller.
Real Housewives of Rome.
Honestly. It was fun, if not a little silly, and then I thought the kind of final act kind of collapsed around itself a bit.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
I had a great time in this movie. I thought it was trashy fun. It was very classic.
Intrigue, furtive glances.
Yes, it was very this reminded me of like a lot of 2000s Oscar winners.
Yeah.
Where it's just clearly designed to be Oscar bait.
Yeah.
I thought it was very beautiful. The cinematography in particular,
really nice.
gorgeous. The lighting is amazing. There's some really beautiful shots. But it's just fucking stupid. Like, what happens is fucking dumb. And it's like, here's the thing that really got me. When the twist, which I will not say because the movie did not come out
twist that
long ago.
Yeah.
But the person that the twist centers around, there is a key scene towards the end of the movie where, like, the villain, essentially, like Mr. Fascist wants to be Pope, gives a speech that's very impassioned and angry and Islamophobic. And then this other person stands up and is supposed to give a speech that is clearly intended textually to be like meaningful and powerful. Yeah. And I thought it was dumb. And like it just didn't feel like it had any weight to it. And the person ends it by being like, it's not about where the church has been. It's where the church is going next. I'm like, the fascist was just yelling about where the church is going next is fucking killing Muslim people. Yeah. So like maybe you need a more compelling like stance than just like the church can evolve. You even said jack shit about what the church evolves to. What are we doing here?
Yeah, like so the consensus of the movie is that like by the end of it, I really like the themes that are developed in the first 2/3 of like the tradition of Catholic Church versus like the progressives who are trying to heal the image. But the only way this movie fucking makes sense is if the traditionalists win out because it's a goddamn Catholic Church. They're the most.
It's crazy that abortion is not mentioned in this movie.
Honestly,
even one time
at all. But just the idea that like it just seems
which is
like
the crux actually of conflict.
Yeah. And it just seems that like I don't know. You're gonna spend all this time with themes of like the like traditional kind of more. I don't know, fucked up, bigoted parts of the Catholic Church versus the new blood that's coming in that's going to be progressive. Like I was setting it up. I thought it was setting up to be like clearly like a tradition in the Catholic Church always wins. There's no way to conquer this. And then they're like little fairy dust. And it's like, well, actually love wins. And it's like, okay, well, it was not really earned at all, but
yeah, not earned. And just like, again, not earned internal to the movie. Like the person that is supposed to be like this revelation, totally revolutionary moment of transformation in the church is not compelling, in my opinion.
Yeah,
like
it's the worst written character in the whole thing.
Yeah, and not because the actor is not doing a solid job. I think the acting of it is fine. It's literally what the person is saying.
Yeah,
is dumb and does not feel like priests who have given up theoretically fucking women for their entire lives, and 100 and whatever of them from all across the world have come to try and compete to be the new pope. And they were like, yes, I was swayed by this person who said in 1 minute gave a speech and said, what matters is where the church is going.
He did it. But I also like they telegraphed very early because when he gets one vote in the first one, I was like, well, that's the guy that they're going to fucking. It was a lot of fun. Actors being great for the most part, I think, and just having great scenes together.
The Tooch is pulling out all the stops.
Yeah, Lithgow is doing some good stuff.
And I like him. It's not that I don't like him, but I was very...
I think that's
enraptured by what he was delivering.
And I think that's a hallmark of his, that you always kind of forget he's in shit. And then you remember, oh yeah, not only is he in it, but he's really goddamn good in it too. And so Conclave, it was fun. I was glad I saw it, but kind of stupid.
It honestly, it's the kind of movie that in the future I will watch the first 2/3 and stop watching it. Like, it's just the cattiness of it is really well drawn. That kind of parlor room thriller, people standing in rooms talking, one of my favorite kinds of movies. Good time, but it trying to have some message about the transformation of the Catholic Church is
a bit
stupid as fuck.
A bit clumsy.
Not relevant.
And I also saw another religious based movie. I saw Heretic, and I feel kind of the same about Heretic, and that there was a lot of stuff that I liked, but overall kind of silly. And the biggest thing that I had was I kind of left just like, what was the point of this? Like, what was in general, what are we trying to say about this? I mean, Hugh Grant's fun as hell. But yeah, it just kind of, to me, amounted to nothing, which if anyone hasn't seen, basically it's like two Mormon girls go knock on this guy's door doing their mission. And he's like, first seems kind of gregarious and kind, and then you realize he's kind of like just a fucking Reddit moron about atheism and is like gonna hold them there and do dumb shit to them. And it just kind of goes nowhere. I don't know. You saw that one too, right?
Indeed. Producer Chantal and I and our good friend Jesse saw it week before last, I think. And my take is pretty similar to yours. My biggest thing about it is that it wasn't scary, or there are parts of it that start to gesture at being scary. So for me, like the perfect example of it is he's lecturing them in a room, and behind them you realize there's like a figure shrouded in a curtain.
I was going to say, how dare you say it's not scary? Because when that part happened, it
was scaring the shit out of me. I was like, what's going to happen?
But
the anticipation,
of it,
it's nothing. It's Reddit atheist.
Yeah.
A dude who's sucking the dick of Sam Harris in his free time, fully just blah. It didn't capitalize on the moments that it created. And not that a movie has to be exactly what I predict it will be for me to enjoy it. Certainly that's not true. But I really thought what we were going to get is a guy, even if we're going down the Reddit atheist route, that it was going to be like basically religious saw traps or something to try and compel their faith.
Yeah.
And instead they just spend a lot of time locked in a basement.
In a room.
And not seemingly having like meaningful conversations or expressed introspection about their faith as a consequence of that. I agree. It felt like it went nowhere. It felt like there was this big promise, and then it was just like, nothing. Religion hates women. Got it, dude. I got it. Thank you so much. I live in the United States of America.
It was also kind of a bummer because it was like, oh, okay, so it's going where we think it's going. Is that like there was never a... Are we going to have some sort of a like... I don't know, some sort of evolution of this to become something else. I kept waiting for that shoe to drop until it became the other thing other than just what it seemed like it was, and it never does.
Right. Yeah, it didn't like zigzag at all.
No, at all. But then I saw two great movies.
Ooh, lay it on me.
I saw the 1975 film The Night Porter, which I had never seen before, and that is a fucking great movie. I don't know. Do you like that movie? I subsequently learned afterwards that it was quite divisive and people did not like it upon release.
Did you notice that the two stars
are from The Damned? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It stars Charlotte Rampling and
Dick Bogart,
which we talked about on The Damned. But yeah, The Night Porter is great. It's like takes place several years after World War II, and Dick Bogart plays a night porter at a hotel, and he is a part of this like secret society of former Nazis trying to basically kill or get rid of anyone who might be able to serve as a witness to their war crimes. When he runs into Charlotte Rampling's character, who's a girl that he
is a witness to his war crimes.
He's a witness to his war crimes first and foremost, but also they developed a very odd relationship in a concentration camp that they then continue outside of the concentration camp, like in present day, where like it is consensual to a degree, but it's also not, because she's a prisoner and he's a guard. But there is like, yeah, it's just, there's a lot of like really interesting fucked up dynamics that it's exploring, and like I fucking loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I like it. It's not a movie that I'm trying to rewatch frequently, because it's quite intense.
It is intense, yeah.
But it's something that easily would have fit into our Italians cover fascism. The director is a woman, interestingly, and is Italian. So it would have tucked nicely in there, and kind of understanding the ways in which sexual dynamics and relations mirror or are an attempt to pervert the power relations and dynamics that are present elsewhere. Yeah. In the social and political environment.
And my final one is one that we've talked about a lot, and I know is a Hal favorite, but I saw 1980s film by Ken Russell, Altered States, and holy shit, that is honestly, there were a few moments where I was like, I felt I was going to stand up and applaud just in my living room, just like, yeah.
There's truly nothing. Awesome. There's truly nothing like it. Nothing. I mean, it's like, it's pretty unmatched.
Yeah. It's just a fucking crazy ass. For those who might not have seen it, we've talked about it a lot, but it is a guy who is doing experiments to, I don't know, kind of uncover whatever the like whatever our base lizard brain is at the like very core of humanity. He's doing like experiments with
like sensory deprivation,
drugs and sensory deprivation to try to find that like core essence of what a human is, and ends up like kind of fucking up in a way where he's like where it takes a real body horror turn.
Yeah, he like breaks the evolutionary chain in time for himself.
And I mean, there's no way to not spoil it to say this next part, but when that fucking monkey man jumps out of that tank, I literally was like, I need to do a standing ovation by myself in my living room. So I was like, there is like hints to where like that's might be where it's going, but I was like, well, that might be kind of silly to see that happen. And then it does, and it works so fucking good. And I did read some reviews that don't like the monkey sequence, and I'm like, well, you're fucking wrong, because
the insanity is part of the point.
We've talked recently about like Audacity will take a movie a long way for me. So like if you have the guts to just be like, we're gonna make this monkey man jump out this tank, then I'm like, all right, let's do it.
I'm a big fan of the many-eyed goat figure.
Oh my.
That shit is horrifying terrifying. And also kind of funny at the same time.
Yeah. And William Hurt is so goddamn
he's
good.
Amazing
he's
in
really,
it.
really good.
It's also one of the things I like a lot about the movie, kind of zoomed out, aside from the direct experience of watching it, is that 1980, that's like, we're coming right out of a time where anthropology and archaeology, like the 70s were a major time of, depending on your perspective, new discoveries or continued colonial expansion in Western university contexts. And I think like Ken Russell tackling this and infusing it with a psychedelic perspective is just like, nobody's doing it like him. Nobody did it like him. No one's done it like him. It
was wild. It was one
unparalleled
shit. But I almost did just started over at when it ended, because I was like, I want to watch that shit again, because it was great.
It's one of those movies that it hasn't really happened since we moved here, but in the past, or since we moved to the house we bought, but in the past, when Mike would come home and I would just be like
watching something weird,
I would be like 20 minutes into a movie, like I beat him home by 20 minutes. I'm 20 minutes into a movie. He's like, what the fuck is your problem? Okay. Like, I must.
We both have significant others, and there is no other joy than like having your significant other walk in while you're watching the weirdest shit in the world. And I do enjoy that quite a bit. There is like a little part of me that like, I wish my wife would have walked in when that monkey man came out, because
the way you say monkey man for some reason is really funny to me.
Which, well, Dev Patel
monkey
movie
man.
from this year, also Monkey Man, which I liked as well.
You're saying it almost as if the words rhyme, even though they don't. I don't know how else to describe it. It's good. Don't stop.
What about you? What have you been watching lately?
So there are 2 movies that I want to talk about. One that's a new release, one that is distinctly not a new release. New release is Anora, 2024, directed by Sean Baker, starring Mikey Madison. I did not like it as much as I hoped that I would. I found that it was significantly bleaker than his other films. And I'll say this. Most of the movie, I was like, okay, I'm on the ride. It kind of has this almost like Coen Brothers-esque black comedy series of beats in it. And I thought it was a kind of a different take on a film about a sex worker. And then the end for me just like sucked all of the air out of the room. And it made me feel like, as the writer and director, Sean Baker was like setting up a gotcha for not only the audience, but for the character. And I found it to be very disappointing.
Oh, that's a bummer. Because I feel like he does bleak well, that like his other movies are fairly bleak in content, but there's a sense of like optimism and hope and humanity in them.
Well, that's the thing, is I think there is like a little bit of a sense of like autonomy within constraints that we see his characters engage in. And this is very much a movie where you just see like physically and metaphorically doors slam in the face of the main character. I think also the thing for me is that this has led me to like a little bit of a like retrospective evaluation of some of his other stuff. And I don't know if you recall, but when we covered the Florida Project, one of my critiques of that movie is that the mother, who is a sex worker, has in that film has like no interiority. She just like makes decisions, and you know, her kid or other people like bear the consequences of that. But it doesn't seem like she has like a fully fleshed out characterization behind those decisions. And I do think there is some interiority for the character of Anora. I don't think it's that she doesn't have that fleshed out, but it feels like he is setting her up to punish her, is the overall feeling that I left the movie with. And it led me to kind of all the parts of the movie that I enjoyed in the context of the end made me then not enjoy those moments, because what felt like a juxtaposition in the context of individual scenes felt like kind of a juxtaposition between light and dark, or a juxtaposition between people's inherent humanity and their crushing environments in the context of what happened at the end. It just feels brutalizing, in my opinion. Also, he's a like horrible Zionist. And so
Sean Baker is?
Yes. And so all of those things, like the full constellation, I'll continue to see his movie. I still like them. I'm not saying Anora is like a bad film, but it is harder for me to not see echoes of perspectives on worthy and unworthy to live violence-free lives, I'll say. It's kind of my personal
By the way,
takeaway.
thank goodness this podcast is not on Twitch, because you would have just gotten us banned.
For saying the word Zionist.
You're not allowed to say Zionist on Twitch anymore.
Conveniently, I don't watch anything on Twitch, so.
Okay. I don't.
That's not true. I very occasionally, when something happens, like if there's like a political incident, sometimes Mike will turn on Hassan.
Actually,
but I do not personally, I have never in my life turned on Twitch.
Matter of fact, I'm going to change my current event segment to talk about this very thing that has happened on Twitch.
Oh, all right.
That's what we call a tease in the biz.
It is.
So I hear you also watched an older movie.
Indeed. I watched a movie that I think could best be described as a docudrama called Kamikaze Hearts from 1986. Yeah. Directed by Juliet Bashore, who is like primarily a documentarian. And it is an extremely fascinating movie about, and part of why I also wanted to talk about it is because it's about a sex worker, actually several sex workers, a woman who, a lesbian who makes pornography, named Sharon Mitchell, who is like actually a woman who made pornography. And her girlfriend, Tigger, who also made pornography, but like is at this point in time largely a director of porn. And it is fictional, but they all play themselves, or people like there are some folks in it who use different like pseudonyms, but they are playing versions of themselves. And the film that they're making in the movie is not a porn film that they were actually making, but it is like entirely, it's a simulacrum of their lives, basically. And it's a lot of like cutting between pornography being made and various folks involved in the production of pornography talking about what it means to them, smoking cigarettes and having philosophical conversations, arguing with their partners, which bleeds the line between, they're both performers, but also they have relationships outside of this context. Also, not all, but most people in the movie are queer in some form. And I found it to be really like propulsively engaging. And Sharon Mitchell as a figure is just super interesting. She was really influential in moving the industry of pornography towards mandatory testing. And ultimately like turned away from performing in pornography, but never became like a moralizer. So she's a very interesting figure, and I really enjoyed the movie, and I definitely will be watching it again.
Oh yeah. Well, let's move on to those current events. What's going on in the world that's either got you celebrating or living in despair? I feel like yours might be a living in despair and then a celebrating based on today's news.
This is a wild one because I like had something written and then just like multiple times during the day, additional news dropped. And I was like, I guess I will continue to expand this. So my initial bit was about Matt Gaetz' nomination for Attorney General.
He's gonna do great. Oh wait, did something happen already?
Well, and like prior to what happened today, the fact that the House Ethics Committee would not affirmatively vote to release the report that they were gathering on him. So that's kind of what I was initially going to talk about.
Yeah.
But then at 12:24 p.m. today, Matt Gaetz posted on Twitter that he was withdrawing himself from the nomination. I assume, and I know Chantal has expressed this, Mike has expressed it to me previously as well, that we'll be getting, like a gubernatorial run from him in 2026. But from my perspective, the fact that he prematurely resigned from his House seat, like he definitely didn't have to do that if that was just ultimately his goal, right? If he didn't care about the prospect of becoming Attorney General at all, you don't need to resign your House seat immediately. There's absolutely no reason. The only reason to do that is to block the report being released so that you can then become Attorney General. So I'm just experiencing some delight. I am celebrating, one, that he is not going to be the fucking Attorney General of the goddamn United States. Theoretically, idealistically, bullshittedly, whatever, the utmost defender of the law in the United States of America. But also I'm like really delighting in the fact that that motherfucker did not get what he wanted here. And I just fucking know he's toasted about it. He's that motherfucker has to be upset about what's going on right now.
Yeah. Taking it out on Nestor.
Speaking of Nestor.
Uh-oh.
And then today at 1 p.m., CNN reported that Gaetz withdrew because the ethics committee was told that there was a second episode of statutory rape that dates to 2017, the same year. And we know this relates to Nestor because if you're not a familiar listener, The first episode of statutory rape is believed or has been reported to be substantiated through Venmo payments to a 17-year-old in the first instance that went through in part Nestor, a man he calls his quote unquote adopted son.
Yeah.
Like Nestor used Venmo to pay a 17-year-old.
Damn, that's crazy.
Allegedly. I imagine maybe you should say allegedly.
Allegedly, Nestor.
Allegedly. In the first instance. But what made the other shoe drop today is that reportedly the ethics committee identified a second instance of horror. And so I just wanted to touch on that. I also wanted to talk a little bit about allegedly my alleged experience with the allegedly withdrawn, allegedly formerly nominated.
Yes. Wait, like a personal experience you've had with Maddie G?
Indeed.
Okay. I'm excited.
So when I was
I'm excited or horrified.
I mean, nothing heinous happened to me.
Good.
It's not that salacious or scandalous. But in high school, my primary, not my only, because I was like fucking, a really involved, obsessed idiot. But my primary hobby in high school was Model United Nations, non-sports related, was Model United Nations. I liked a lot, right? I was an officer. I won lots of gavels. It was like very much my thing. And then when I came to college, I was like, oh, FSU has a highly competitive, particularly for a public university, Model United Nations team. It's called the World Affairs Program, or WAP.
Get a bucket.
Yeah.
For that United Nations. No,
that was great. I support it. And my involvement with that program is a net negative in my life. It's how I met my first horrible, allegedly ex-husband.
I don't think you need the alleged for that one, dude.
I don't know. I didn't, provide any specifics, but anyway, he sucks. And I spent my entire undergraduate period with him and wrapped up in him and this dumbass program. But the previously mentioned alleged statutory rapist is an alum. He did his undergraduate at Florida State. He did not do his law degree here. He did that at William and Mary, but he did his undergraduate degree here at FSU. And he was also an alum of
WAP.
Yes.
Damn.
Of many sorts, apparently. But in this instance, I'm talking about Model United Nations. And how Model United Nations works at FSU and possibly other places, I don't necessarily know this, is that there's kind of a shadow government of alumni. And many of those alumni are very powerful. They're high powered, like they're politicians, they're lawyers, they're high up in business. And they are very involved in what's happening in the undergraduate club. So, yes, I've had personal contact with many years. I mean, literally, like I would be talking about 2009, 2010. But let's just say he would hang out in spaces that it didn't make sense for an alum to be hanging out. And I don't, I've never thought highly of him.
Damn.
I'll say that.
Always a creep.
Yeah.
Always a creep.
So, allegedly.
Creep.
So to zoom this out slightly beyond this particular piece of shit, I also just wanted like a little side tangent on Model United Nations and how when I was in high school, my perspective on it was very much like it was an avenue for learning more about the world and including like many places I would have never been exposed to through any other avenue aside from being compelled to investigate it. I learned a lot about international governance. It's how, when we've talked before about like structural adjustment policies, all of my context for that, the baseline of it is from the United Nations, so now the perspective on it as a high schooler, the way it's talked about in these committees and such, of course, is not like a leftist one, right? It's not oriented towards inspecting colonialism necessarily, but you're supposed to represent the perspective of the nation that you represent. And so depending on what country you are supposed to embody, you can be compelled into adopting perspectives that you, again, might not have been exposed to otherwise. So I found it to be a very like revelatory and enriching experience. Plus, I like to fucking argue and I love to research. So it's a great combination. And then
I did want to ask, what's the weirdest country you ever were?
So
I said the country that you were, but that's not quite.
Here's the thing is that a lot of times the allocation of country in competitions is attached to your school. So your school might be assigned, for example, the United States in any committee that your school is placed in. You might have, depending on the size of your delegation, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever. Probably the most like unique, because much of it are the general body, right? Either the straight up general assembly or Security Council or ECOFIN, which is economic and finance, or like the status of women and girls, right? Like these big committees that have lots and lots of countries in them. Security Council has fewer, but then there are also these committees called crisis committees, which are, instead of being General Assembly, because usually General Assembly will have like an agenda, like you go in and they're like, this is what we're talking about today. Like I did a lot of economic and finance committees because I'm interested in those topics and other people fucking hate it. So it would be like, what we're discussing is a Tobin tax, and we're discussing currency taxes, and we're debating currency taxes and have to come to some resolution that you write up and everybody votes on, whatever, about currency tax. A crisis committee usually has some theme or situation that is specific to it, and then new information emerges to evolve the committee as you go. So one of my favorites and most unique ones I ever did of that was about Eritrea, and like Eritrean independence, and the relationship with Ethiopia, the relationship with Italy, and that I don't know that I would know anything about Eritrea aside from it exists.
I don't even know the word. So you got one on me.
It's a small country in Western Africa.
That's what I was going to say.
Right? Near
you
Ethiopia.
Guys can't see the smugness of my face when I pretend to know things that I had no idea about.
So, it is worth looking up. But yeah. Forgot where I was going with this. Oh, yeah. So that's what you're actually doing, right? In Model United Nations. But so as a high schooler, I fucking loved it. I spent so much time doing it. Like, everyone I dated in high school was like attached to, it was like my whole world revolved around like Model United Nations and soccer and painting also.
Oh yeah. And then Matt Gaetz fucked it up for you.
Matt Gaetz is not who fucked it up. He was just like shit sprinkles on the fucking trash ass Sunday, or trash sprinkles on the shit Sunday, whatever you prefer. But what I was going to say is that, so I had this experience in high school. I come to college. There's like other social things that affect my perspective on it. But what I realized very quickly within like probably 30 minutes of being in my first collegiate committee that we had like traveled to, is that all of these psychos like want to be the CIA director.
Oh,
like
weird.
Actually, like why they're doing it is professional socialization into systems of domination.
That's not
like Wharton grad, like people that are going to graduate from Wharton and are like, oh yeah, and I'm already in talks with like Goldman Sachs, like global partnerships in sub-Saharan Africa, and that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm spending my internship this summer. Is like betting on like water futures.
You got involved because you enjoyed learning and curiosity.
And I like arguing,
and you like arguing.
Fine.
And now I'm understanding that there's people that are like, I gotta learn how to fuck this shit up even worse. I need to get in there to be you wanted to be the change. They wanted
there are multiple people that I like became Facebook friends with in that 3-year period where I was doing collegiate monument. that are like literally politicians, like
Yikes.
actually politicians,
Okay.
many of whom work for politicians, many of whom work for big think tanks, people that have like 3 Ivy League degrees and are making $300,000 destroying the Amazon rainforest. Like, and
That Joe Biden walked into this last week. Just by the way.
He dawdled into. Let's be honest about the motion. But it occurred to me too late.
Yeah, I could see why it would not be the same experience in college when you're dealing with
it's not the same experience. Some of it I think is like almost the idea of like college football versus the NFL, where it's like if you take the top 1%,
you're gonna get
and then transpose that top 1% into a new place where a new 1% emerges.
Yeah,
it's going to shift what's going on.
Yeah,
that is relevant here, of course. And you also have the difference between like 14, you're talking about 13 to 18-year-olds arguing and debating with each other versus, let's say 17 to like 25-year-olds doing this, because there are graduate students that are present as well. But I mean, really, the thing that I want to emphasize is it was a professional socialization experience for like the people who look at the deep state and are like, I could do it better.
Yeah.
And I was not prepared for that at all. And it made me hate it. And one time I was at University of California, Berkeley's conference, the only time I've ever been to California. And I was like doing pretty well in the committee. You can feel, like the flows of people agreeing with you when you're building consensus and stuff. And there was a small contingency of people from an Ivy League school that were in the committee together who were like, oh, we really like this idea. We have this idea to add. We should write a resolution together and we'll put it forth. And like, we can take the consensus you've built, the consensus we've built, whatever, and advance it. So like, let's stay after, we'll write it together and then we'll meet up early tomorrow and submit it before anyone comes in. So I stay after, I write it, I send it to them, and when I get there the next morning, they were there 15 minutes early and they submitted it without my name on it.
What the fuck? Fuck them.
And that's when I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And all of these people are who are going to be the state legislators in all of our respective states. And that's horrible. Yep. And so that's who Matt Gaetz is.
That is.
And also a rapist, allegedly. So how about you?
Well, I teased earlier that I was going to change it. Now I'm going back because I don't, who the fuck cares? There's been drama on Twitch because there's shit going on with Hassan Piker and several other Twitch streamers, Zionist Twitch streamers who are trying to like get him banned for his takes or whatever. And Twitch came out and said that they are outlawing Zionism or Zionists to be used on their site as a pejorative. You can still say it, just can't throw it out as an insult.
This is why
it's weird.
I'm just going to say this because I do think our listeners are maybe people. Mike and I kind of not go back and forth and that we're like fighting, but like a debate about or chew on this idea all the time. This is why I'm opposed to censorship being done by private companies. People can say their cute little like bon mot about how, well, it's not the government. You don't have freedom from the government repressing from private companies repressing your speech. At the end of the day, who do they fucking target? Overwhelmingly leftists and people that are otherwise marginalized, vulnerable to power. So fuck that shit.
For sure. But
okay, sorry. I'm fucking on a goddamn soapbox now. I built a little soapbox and I'm standing on it.
My original current event I do want to visit because it's just too much fun to not talk about. But Alex Jones's InfoWars was recently bought at auction by The Onion, which is like kind of a beautiful full circle thing. But now, actually, I was going to say, do you know how I learned that Matt Gaetz had withdrawn?
How?
Because I went to InfoWars today because I was like, I have been checking every day because so InfoWars went down like the next day after they got bought by The Onion. Like the website was down and it was down for 24 to 48 hours. And so I've been going back every day like a fucking freak checking it to see. I want to see like, is it still down or is The Onion got it now? And it is like still under Alex Jones's control. because he is protesting the purchase of InfoWars by The Onion. Are you aware of anything that he's like saying or trying to do?
I have not seen his response to it. I saw the news that The Onion was awarded his site. And I do have to say this is a little sneak peek for later, but when John Voight shows up as a de-aged freak, he kind of looks like Alex Jones to me.
Ooh, Alex Jones now or Alex?
Like a slightly younger Alex Jones, but just the general rotundness of and redness of face.
Yeah.
Beadiness of eyes, etc.
I don't mean to ruin everyone's evening, but like,
oh Lord,
yes, young.
Is he hot?
He is. It's weird.
I'll Google it.
It's weird. He's like,
I mean, you can both be hot and horrible. You know, that's totally possible.
Young Alex Jones has got he's a little hot. But so he is alleging now that there was collusion in they colluded with The Onion. And he's trying to sue because basically what happened was the Sandy Hook family, who the proceeds would benefit, gave a credit to The Onion, essentially, basically throwing their support behind them in what they said would have equaled, I think, roughly like $4 million worth in. I think Hal found a picture of young Alex Jones. Let me see if this is the one I'm thinking of. I mean,
this is not my kind of man. I mean, he does have like I have a few kinds bangs. Of men. I also just don't. Yeah,
he does have bad hair. He's always had bad hair.
Yeah,
even now.
And like his face, I just also like a very strong man is of concern to me. I'm skeptical if it's not present with other traits and interests.
Again, looks may vary, but it is definitely
he's not ugly. I'll tell you. When you say it's just like not my kind
Alex
of guy.
Jones, and you picture like a fucking toad, and he wasn't as toadish in his younger days. He was like ripped, and he does have bad hair.
This is why he's taking so many like testosterone pills.
Yeah,
now
like
is
Jonathan
to try
Taylor
and reclaim
Thomas hair when he was young. But yeah, he is trying to like sue The Onion right now. So it is wrapped up in a bunch of, which I mean is like not going to work because that's basically his entire game for all of this is just drag out any possible appeal, any possible way to drag it through the courts. But it's been, as an Alex Jones fan, not the right word, Alex Jones observer, it's been a fun week or so. He was like broadcasting from his studio, like kind of just wandering around the halls. Like, honestly, like, I think he thought, like, they're going to fucking bust in and try to kick me out any second, and I want to be live when they do. But his broadcasts were really funny because he was just, like, wandering around his...
How soon do you think until he is, like, engaged in a The Shining situation?
In what sense?
Like, I mean, he already has like the typewriter part down, right? So when's he going to start wielding an axe is my point.
So he several Christmases ago got drunk and started throwing hatchets around the studio. You can probably go find that on YouTube. So I think he's already there. He's been in Shining mode for a couple years. He threw a hatchet and it hit one of his cameras. But there was an operator behind it.
Cameraman, what the fuck?
Yeah, he got hella drunk on like Christmas Eve, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and started throwing hatchets around his studio. Shout out! I know I've mentioned them before, but Knowledge Fight is a podcast that covers like everything Alex Jones, and they're great. If you're into Alex Jones and his weirdness and all the goings on, I can't recommend Knowledge Fight enough. It's awesome.
Those people have a stronger constitution than I. That's all I'll say about that.
But are we ready to move on to our topic of discussion today?
Sure.
Fantastic. I am so happy. I love when I get to make Hal watch terrible movies. So bad. I don't know what you're talking about because I had a great time.
Oh, man.
So for this episode, let us hold your hand as we take you to that shining city on the hill because we watched the 2024 film Reagan, directed by Sean McNamara. And before talking about the movie, let's talk about this director, Sean McNamara, another prime example of the failed showbiz bro to conservative entertainer by producing like low budget kids content. Guy. He produced and directed a Casper the Ghost sequel and a Three Ninjas sequel, which, by the way, I was fucking obsessed with this Three Ninjas sequel.
What is Three Ninjas? I'm not familiar with this at all. Oh my god.
Tangent. This was
let's go down this tangent.
So honestly, I do love.
Did not talk about this fucking movie.
I am just a few years older than you, and I feel like I love finding those things that hit at that perfect time, and then were never a thing again.
Okay.
The Three Ninjas was a like Home Alone style movie about three brothers who took like karate classes, and then there was a home invasion, and they have to use all their fucking karate skills to like beat the home invaders or whatever.
So it's a karate, the people underneath the stairs.
A little bit.
Or under the stairs, rather.
But more sure.
A karate Goonies, if
you
will.
Karate Goonies. Yeah. But
when did this come out?
Early 1990s, probably.
Anyone of note in it? Like,
no.
anyone go on to do anything?
That's probably not true, because I feel like the original Three Ninjas, the bad guy was very interesting. 1992 is when it came out. Oh my god, I just saw the cover of it from when I rented it at Blockbuster a million years ago, and it brought back everything. Okay, so no one interesting is in these movies. But this guy, Sean McNamara, that directed Reagan, also directed Three Ninjas High Noon at Mega Mountain, which is a Three Ninjas sequel that stars Hulk Hogan as a character named Dave Dragon. So it was great. I loved it when I was 8.
Yes, please. Like, their grandfather that trains them is Victor Wong, who is in like a ton of stuff.
Yeah. I completely forgot about Victor Wong being in it, because it's mostly like the movie is like the stars are like 7, 9, and 11-year-olds.
Yes, who did seemingly nothing else. A few movies, a few choice films. But
they were.
Shouts out to Victor Wong.
They were not good. But Sean McNamara, the director of Reagan, of course, not the most prestigious career, but he's working. Keep scrolling down his IMDb page, and you'll see by the late 2000s, the work's drying up, just a handful of credits on stray episodes of kids programming. But in 2011, hits it big with Soul Surfer, the faith-based movie about a Christian girl who got her arm bit off by a shark. Now, McNamara is a Catholic, and who knows what's in a man's heart, but this motherfucker clearly saw his gravy train hitched to the steam engine of low-budget, faith-based movies, and he hopped on board. So nowadays, his credits are a mixture of the same old kids programming, but mixed with faith-based weirdness, obvious conservatives, including, wild, a failed TV show with co-host Roseanne Barr and Rabbi Shmuley that he did like a 1 episode like talk show with those two. Yikes. So it's clear what's going on. Absolutely no shame chasing the bag, but I think it's important to understand that this director's cynical view of the world and his cynical view of films is a better avenue to understand his film Reagan, one of the dumbest, most cynical, ahistorical pieces of watery dog shit I've ever seen. Reagan, directed by Sean McNamara, is an embarrassing film, a hagiography of Ronald Reagan, shamelessly recontextualizing American history, paint Reagan as the moral crusader he pitched himself as, and not, like Sean McNamara, a failed showbiz guy who pandered and struck gold in the river of right-wing conservatism. McNamara's film turns a complete blind eye to Reagan's most egregious sins, such as non-response to the AIDS crisis or the disastrous war on drugs. And in many cases, the film tries to rewrite history entirely by telling us Reagan's perceived failures are actually awesome. Like, one of my favorite parts is how they basically say that Reagan's moronic Star Wars missile defense strategy was actually kind of a 4D chess psychological war against the Soviets. That's plain and simple. This movie stinks. There's so much stupid stuff I want to talk about. How did you like 2024's Reagan?
Well, I didn't.
I knew you wouldn't.
My first thought, really, though, like my overwhelming opinion of it is that just it's really fucking ugly.
Bad.
Like, it just looks
terrible,
disgustingly like Thomas Kincaid made it.
Yeah, every.
My second train of thinking, however, is that Reagan, the man, the politician, the myth,
the legend,
is projected in this. I should have looked at your part of the script first, because I also use the word hagiography.
I mean, it's kind of hard to avoid. Like with this movie, it's kind of hard to avoid the word because that is why it exists.
But it has me pondering the intersections of celebrity, pop culture, and political power. And how in the US we have grown accustomed to politicians who use pop culture pathways to ascend into power. And how maybe like Trump was setting up the roadmap for Trump. I don't know.
Yep.
So this dynamic can take multiple forms, such as cultural authorities being tools for campaigning. So we think about kind of the unprecedented level of like actors, singers, performers, etc., who turned out in force for Obama, and especially in 2008. Or how a candidate might leverage the mythology of the characters that they portrayed in their film industry history. Say, as the unstoppable ass-kicking tough guys Arnold played, or Reagan's cowboy frontier heroes and charming chivalrous good old clean-cut men became shortcuts to developing their political personas as the governor and the great communicator, respectively. Or the ways in which Trump has fully supplanted governmental arenas and democratic processes as the primary venues of policy conflict, with rants and cultivating kind of resembling of fame and fandom parasocial feelings on Twitter, then Truth Social, Fox News, and a myriad of bro-led podcasts. As I watched this movie on my phone.
Nice.
The viewing it deserves.
The way it was meant to be seen.
Yeah. And I'll never forget, I can't remember where the interview was, but there was an interview some time ago where Spike Lee was like, got to think about it. That's what the kids are doing. You know, kids are watching movies on their phone, so you got to adapt to it. So this one goes out to you, Spike.
To Spike.
And I've never watched a movie on my phone before, I'll tell you that.
Really?
Yeah, I fucking hate that. I don't want that at all. The only time I've ever watched like more than a YouTube video or something on my phone is while my back was being tattooed. I would watch like Survivor episodes because I just needed something to like pour into that wasn't super serious.
I do want to say I watched the first 2 seasons of Lost on an iPod video in like 2005. So.
Okay. Well, now you're just bragging about being an innovator. Okay. But yeah, so as I watched this movie on my phone, the viewing it deserves, and I chewed on this phenomenon and how it has become really the dominant mode of political operation in the United States. How Reagan's careers reflected its, kind of, if not initial surge, at least like significant surge, and how this movie is engaged in its active practice. Guy Debord and his theorizing about the society of the spectacle came to my mind. Are you familiar with this idea at all?
I am not.
Okay. Well, everyone, you can read the entirety of it on Marxist.org, which we'll post in, I don't know, places. I deleted Twitter, so I'm totally unmoored. I'm totally unmoored. No, I miss it a lot. I hate Elon. He's ruining my life. But in a society of the spectacle, citizens are not citizens. They're not claimants in the political process. They're not combatants. They're not active participants with all of the associated rights and responsibilities of being so, but instead alienated, passive audience to a distracting, substance-free performance whose ending is foreclosed and whose conflict has been contained and repressed. I almost said that. Repressed. In a society of the spectacle, Plato's shadows on the cave wall are truth, and the melodrama of their flashes of light are self-evidently the whole point. As Debord wrote, the spectacle is not a collection of images, but a social relation among people mediated by images, in service of and dictated by the means of production of the modern era. There is no interconnectivity or interdependence to be found in a quote-unquote community whose primary identifiable similarity is the direction in which we face the wall or the stage or the screen, and the myths we all receive and whose recognition of shared material reality is effaced. Being is replaced by representation. Taking action is swapped out for watching and consuming. In Reagan, 2024, the human Ronald Reagan is transmogrified into a commodity. He is a representation floating free of contextualized time and history, a production of bourgeois ideology projected through a sanded down cowboys and Indians ass diorama of the 20th century. Reagan and his celebrity rendered a numb and numbing spectacle, an inverted image of the proletariat's dispossession. In short, this shit sucks.
It was a movie.
Sorry,
and
I'm
you used the word
having a time.
You used the word in short, but my first note would be this movie is fucking long.
In long.
It is like 220 and
I think it's like 217.
God, it is so long.
Doesn't get refreshing. Every time I would move my foot.
It is long and there is nothing interesting going on ever. It is like a full like Forrest Gump style like a revisit of American history where like you're going to spend 3 minutes in any particular time frame and then we are moving on. You're not holding on to anything. But I did love that not only did we open with this, but we revisit this scene of because I knew it. I knew that this, especially we see how like Republicans responded to the Trump shooting this year and turning it into like every image of like the fight or whatever. But we get multiple scenes of the Hinckley shooting.
Yeah, it's a wild to start the movie that way. Also,
so crazy.
I just want to say, I mean, I am not Reagan. I'm not a conservative politician. I will never be president of the United States.
Hey, don't say never.
I will never be president of the United
Just
States.
saying, you never know.
But if someone made a movie about my life later and they were trying to be like laudatory and myth making and they open it up with somebody shooting me, like it's horrible. Like there are lots of choices made in this movie that are, I think even in like trying to follow the mission of, or in service of the mission of making him into this mythological figure that is just like achieves an inverted level of embarrassment, basically. Like he just looks like an ineffectual doofus that happened to be in the right place at the right time, or maybe the wrong place at the wrong time, depending on your perspective.
Hey, I also do love how many times they like are trying to be respectful to Jim Brady, the guy that like actually fucking died in the Hinckley shooting, or did he die? He died in the Hinckley shooting. Yeah. But they just can't care even for a second. They're just like, well, Reagan though, he was our big boy that day. He survived it.
This thought just occurred to me that this movie, because you referred to it as being kind of like Forrest Gump in ways, which I agree with as well. But it's almost like the great movie ride of Reagan.
That's a great way to, like, it's a theme park ride of like, it's the small world. You're going to hit all the good stuff. And well, and just like, the great movie ride, which no longer exists, but used to be at Hollywood Studios. And before that, was known as MGM Studios, would just take you through like the highlights of, or sometimes not even the highlights, but maybe like the climax or just a very distinctive visual moment in films throughout MGM's and Disney, like broader Disney's history. And that's what this movie is really doing. Exactly. And everyone in it looks like a fucking mannequin. They all look fucking crazy. Dennis Quaid, let's start there. How do we like him as Reagan? I kind of like the voice that he was doing. I didn't hate that. Yeah, he is doing a voice for sure. I do think that I made a joke. No, it wasn't even a joke. I did a Reagan impression on the last one where I just started it by doing the only word that I know how to do a Reagan impression, which is whale. And I do feel like that is his way into his Reagan character every time. There were innumerable times where he starts every sentence like that. Whale. And then it just kind of goes away. You two have the same acting coach. Me and D-Man. D Quaid. Yeah. DQ. DQ. I like to call him the DQ. I didn't even put it together. But everyone looks weird. He brings the cream. Everyone looks weird. Everyone sounds weird, but no one looks or sounds weirder in this movie than John Voight, who is our framing device, who is like, this framing device is wild. He is a ex-KGB agent meeting with some asshole. I don't know why even he's talking about it, but he's like reflecting back on his time as Ronald Reagan's handler is not the right word, but I guess guy who watched Ronald Reagan's career. Unclear, but he's some sort of KGB guy assigned to Reagan. And he is crazy. He is his accent, his face.
He for sure did not have an accent coach for this.
Not at all.
He is just doing
Yakov Smirnoff.
Looney Tunes level.
It's very guttural, his accent. It's just like a lot of pidgin English.
It's like he should be chasing a moose and a squirrel. Okay, that is what he's giving it.
Exactly what he's doing.
He doesn't know any women not named Natasha. Okay.
But the movie is framed around this guy basically being like, let me tell you all the career achievements of Ronald Reagan. And he is just going to take you through.
I like that got Italian.
Yeah, did get a little Italian at the end. But he's like, let me take you through his career. We start as Ronald Reagan, the fucking Hollywood guy. And his time as SAG president. I don't know. What'd you think about all this? Because
so, as someone that quite likes Gene Wyman, I did think it was
Reagan's
first wife.
wife, yeah.
Yeah, as an actress, I don't know a ton about her personally. My understanding is that she did have, or at least was accused of, communist sympathies. So, and she got divorced from him, so she's seemingly pretty cool. But she's in a Douglas Sirk film that I love a lot, and I enjoy some of her other performances. And I do think it was kind of funny that they were basically just like, yep, she got too famous for him.
100%. Yeah. That part I did like that they did not.
I was just going to say, I think there's several parts of this movie where they walk ass backwards into a conclusion, because there is a point where during the heavy focus on union busting, where Kevin Dillon as Jack Warner, the head of, one of the eponymous Warner Bros. Also nuts that's what Kevin Dillon is doing right now or recently.
Hey, good for him.
Yeah. But where there is a scene where Jack Warner is just like, Reagan, you got to turn on your fellow motherfuckers and do what I want. And Reagan's like, uh-huh. And the whole scene is like, this is a scene about how the boss will always alienate workers from each other in service of their own profit. But the movie is like, this was great because the next he was in charge of things.
It was crazy. Like, that was the part that was driving me crazy, was that they were like, that these goddamn power hungry unions, we got to bust them up for the little guy, Jack Warner. It's like, what the fuck is going on here? And specifically the way they treat Herb Sorrell is pretty egregious. We see that in the movie. Ronnie gets elected as president of the Screen Actors Guild and finds himself in this valiant battle against Herb Sorrell, the money-grubbing president of Conference of Studio Unions, who is in the pocket of the commies. And old Ronnie is fighting for the underdogs, Jack Warner. But he is the Screen Actors Guild and all the struggling actors trying to make ends meet. But you'll indulge me, I do want to talk about Herb Sorrell, who shockingly wasn't much like his depiction in the film. Sorrell led the Conference of Studio Unions in a strike in 1945, which most of the animosity between them, as if Reagan had something to do with this. Reagan wasn't even in the Screen Actors Guild until 2 years later. But anyways, the film depicts him as merely rabble-rousing at best, and Sorrell as an insidious attempt by the CSU to use the strikes as a Trojan horse for communism and Marxism. And while Herb Sorrell was definitely a rabble-rouser, he wasn't a communist. He was more just like a troll that would just make references to communists all the time because he knew it would piss people off. And he was once a professional boxer. He organized the Conference of Studio Unions to represent trade workers in Hollywood, like set decorators and carpenters and painters. He made a name for himself with a hugely successful strike against Walt Disney in 1941 on behalf of the artists and animators. In 43, Sorel was attempting to negotiate contracts for a group of set painters, and the conversation stalled out. That's when IATSE, who had a reputation for being the company union, swept in, claiming that Sorel's CSU did not have jurisdiction. So this is what launches the union wars between Jack Warner. Jack Warner is siding with IATSE, the company union, and does not like Sorel at all. So by the time Reagan becomes president of SAG, these strikes were long over, and Reagan's opposition to Sorel was driven almost entirely by fears of the communist menace. The film plays fast and loose with Reagan's involvement in the strike, suggesting he was somehow handpicked to save Hollywood workers from the oppressive Herb Sorel and his union. But really, just like he'd be as president, Reagan was just a mouthpiece for the really, really, really wealthy producers and studio owners who saw Sorel as an obstacle. And the film is so cynical, it actually depicts Reagan's interactions with Jack Warner, the fucking head of Warner Brothers, as like a workers' uprising, that he is defending the workers. So anyway, Sean McNamara and company know that their target audience won't question it. So we're left with this ridiculous and inaccurate interpretation of Reagan and his time as SAG president. I fucking was infuriated every time Kevin Dillon's Jack Warner showed up, because it was so goddamn stupid that they were trying to position him as the like champion of workers in Hollywood.
Well, I think it's part of why, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that Guy Debord's work was like sticking out for me here. But part of it, and I want to be clear, like when he talks about the word, or when he uses the word representation, he's not talking about it in the like contemporary social justice context. He means like as a simulacrum of, or a doubling of, and not the actual thing. Right. And I think that is happening a lot in this movie, because they don't even try and make an argument. By which I mean, when Kevin Dillon as Jack Warner is instigating these fights and pulling Ronnie, old Ronnie on to his side, they're just like, communists fucking suck. And they don't even like say
there's
why.
No depth
like they're
at all.
not
Yeah.
in any way making an ideological argument. They're not even saying like what is true, which is that Jack Warner is like, that is affecting my bottom line. There's literally nothing there's no argument being made. It is like a claptrap popsicle stick level ideological argument happening
Reagan
here.
did it, so it must be great. Is the kind of consensus of it, almost every scene. So this movie just fucking flies through every goddamn, like, okay, we get a childhood, we get an origin story. Did you know that Ronald Reagan, he was a lifeguard once? And that's why he's the moral compass of the United States. That goddamn lifeguard thing. And as many times as they bring it back in this movie, that like, I don't know, like we all had fucking jobs as kids and shit. I don't know. You don't have to, that's what really gets me is like, do we have to make every life experience some sort of, I don't know, like formative, like this is what, I don't know, that it's just so like sentimental and touchy about like the dumbest shit. That's like, yeah, this is a biopic. Like you don't have to make everything a goddamn like revelation to their future life or whatever.
Well, I mean, again, it's myth building, right? Like it's not actually
the
about
entire modus operandi of this movie is myth building.
But what the movie lands on as the raison d'etre, raison d'etre, whatever.
I call it raison d'etre.
Nice,
cultured.
Yeah, it was like you had marbles in your mouth at the end there. That's pretty. That's impressive.
Thank you.
Is that communists destroyed God? Communists killed God.
Yeah.
And Reagan, God is so important. Again, any idea of a political economy, profit motive, who controls the means of production.
He didn't think about that.
And who their interests represent. Literally none of that is part of this at all.
So cynical, Hal. He wasn't thinking about that stuff. He just wanted the commies gone and to make America great again.
Great for the first time again.
Apparently, yeah. We get a lot of really like fucking lame flashbacks. We get to see him in his like childhood, which is there's like nothing interesting happening there. His dad's a drunk, and like that's kind of the whole reason for the childhood flashbacks. We get our Ronnie and Nancy get meeting scenes. Sexual tension off the charts in this movie. You thought so as well, I imagine.
Riding horses poorly.
Damn.
In Malibu.
Okay, we'll get to it at the end, but the ending where the Secret Service agent has to tell him that he has too much Alzheimer's to ride a horse anymore. I could not stop laughing at that scene, at like the weight that they gave to it, and it was so goddamn silly and stupid. And then like it is just a bang. American event. You remember this one? Bang! American event. We get Cuban Missile Crisis, and we kind of get that the Cuban Missile Crisis, I guess, is what made. I don't really understand what their point they're trying to make, but I guess the Cuban Missile Crisis is what made Ronnie say, like, well, these commies are bad again, I guess. None of the events of this movie like matter at all. It is like. This movie is a photo album. We're just flipping through like Time magazine covers and being like, oh, remember that?
Right. And the ride goes through and it stops
and
here.
It stops. Oh, wow.
15 seconds. Nice. An alien, xenomorph pops out of the ceiling. It's really scary. And then he continues. But yeah, and the kind of like I mentioned in the intro, the way it decontextualizes everything and situates it only in its gravitational pull towards Reagan, right? Like none of these episodes or incidents or circumstances have any life or weight or reality outside of his intersection with them.
Doesn't mean
and we
anything.
Blitz through them.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything except that Reagan had an opinion on it, and that's the filter that we see. I do love, like, we get a quick scene of him as like, his ascension as California governor, and like, he really handed it to the commies at the Berkeley protests. I love how much this movie trips over itself to not have to talk about what is being protested at all. Like nothing. Just like protesters are garbage and Reagan's going to clean them up. But like no mention of like what are they protesting exactly? Because these are like big formative for not just like generations of the time, but like our country. Formative moments of like citizens pushing back, and it is treated as if it's like it is like the Rocky training sequence for Reagan. It's just like he slapping these protesters down, bum bada bum bada bum bada bum. I think so fucking stupid.
An important thing about democracy and a true investment in the democratic process, and also in Marxism, is the idea that contention is not a side quest. Contention is the fucking point.
Right.
Like it's the means and it's the end forever and always, as we, from a democratic process perspective, engage each other as citizens and our interests bump up against each other and continually evolve, or in a Marxist process, right, the dialectic evolution of synthesis, of thesis, counter-thesis, and synthesis evolving over time. And this, it's like contention is evil, and that the resolution of it, which is, again, self-evident and baseline assumed to always be correct in the direction that Reagan has carried it in, it is about flattening that contention at all costs. It doesn't matter what the cost is.
Now,
so how about that hippie guy?
Oh my fucking God. Okay. What the fuck? Okay. This is not anybody that anybody should know because this guy fucking sucks. But what the hell is going on with Dana Rohrabacher in this movie? Because he is presented as this like hippie, sage, the guy who saves Reagan's like campaign by being this speechwriter. And I
talk your shit.
I could not fucking understand what this movie was doing by making Dana Rohrabacher seem like Yoda to Reagan. It was fucking crazy. So
he's riding on Reagan's back.
So according to the film, Dana Rohrabacher is this like kind of free spirit surfer guy and a kind of amalgamation of any conservative dork who would say something like being Republican is the new punk rock. He like wears surfer clothes and has to be chastised to dress more professionally. Specifically, he doesn't wear socks in the Oval Office, and that's a problem, apparently. See, Reagan's not just for geriatric bigots. Cool surfer kids like Dana Rohrabacher like him too. But Dana Rohrabacher is not a free spirit, cool hippie guy who uses his beautiful words to bring Reagan's Republican visions to the minds of the people. Dana Rohrabacher is an imperialist and a freak and an asshole. He parlayed his original position as the assistant press secretary to Reagan into a longtime advisory role, specifically one of the architects of the Reagan doctrine, doctrine. Oh my God. In the middle of me getting so angry about Dana Rohrabacher, Chantal just showed me a picture of him posing with a guy with a goddamn Guy Fawkes mask on, which is
Again, all show.
All show. Because this guy who's supposed to be the cool, like free spirit hippie guy, he is one of the architects of the Reagan doctrine, which is the maniacal plan to combat communism by meddling in third world country politics and planning covert actions to overthrow state leaders and replace them with tin pot dictators who are deferential to American capitalism. After working for Reagan, Rohrabacher ran for U.S. Congress in '88, where he served for 30 fucking years before losing to a Democrat in the blue wave following Trump's initial 2016 electoral victory. But I do just want to go down a few of the things, like just scrolling Dana Rohrabacher's Wikipedia, some of his greatest hits, just to show you how much of a fucking cool free spirit hippie guy he is as this movie. He was an advocate for the disastrous wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He has been a career-long advocate against LGBTQ rights. He once tried to abolish the National Endowment for the Arts. During a congressional hearing, Rohrabacher downplayed the effects of climate change by, among other things, saying that the atmosphere was once warmed before by fucking dinosaur farts. He said that on the fucking floor.
You know what they say, first is tragedy, then is farts.
Honestly. During a House hearing, he defended George W. Bush's torture doctrine. And when he got booed by his colleagues in the audience who thought maybe we shouldn't be torturing people, he responded by saying, well, I hope it's your families. I hope it's your families that suffer the consequences. I hope it's your family members that die. Also, Eric fucking Prince considers Dana Rohrabacher a mentor figure. So fuck him. And in 2018, Dana Rohrabacher was tricked by Sacha Baron Cohen in a Who is America segment to advocate for kindergartners to carry guns to school. So like, this guy's a fucking moron. I could not get over the fact that this movie was so invested in like making Dana Rohrabacher seem like a cool, hip, like the not your grandma's conservative guy. God damn it. That made me so angry.
It's I mean, again, it's like the substance free thing where it's like they're like, oh, look, he doesn't wear chinos 100% of the time.
Yeah, he's badass.
He's different.
God damn, what the fuck?
Different.
You see that guy in
It's
jeans?
Like, it's
jeans
all
over there?
representational. It has nothing to do with material, reality, or ideology at all.
So the movie does like very clumsily try to deal with some of Reagan's like less than positive moments. But before we get there, there's another one that I was like, what the fuck is this movie saying? Which is when the Pope gets shot. Because I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this movie is positing that the Soviets shot the Pope. That is what I saw, right?
Yeah. The Soviets caused all bad.
Yeah. It was like literally
everything bad in the world.
It is straight up saying the Soviets are the ones responsible for shooting the Pope, which is not true. The Pope was shot by a guy named Mehmet Ali Akka, who was a ultra nationalist, right wing, crazy dude from Turkey. Decidedly not a part of not involved in
and also, as we know, the Soviets don't care much for religion.
Fanatics. Yes. So. Yeah. God damn it. So crazy. Well, let me ask. So, like, what did you think of like the Margaret Thatcher in this movie?
Well, you know, she's no Meryl Streep.
Hell yeah, she's not. Yeah, there are like several like clumsy scenes where it's like we got to put all the like conservative thinkers of the 80s to like have them come together, and there's like several really clumsy fucking Margaret Thatcher scenes.
I think also just the movie doesn't know what to do with a woman
at all
who's not a cardboard cutout love interest.
Yeah, honestly, it is just like, well, I guess they're gonna have a few scenes together, and that's about it. Also, the movie doesn't know what to do with the Russian leaders of the 80s, because there is honestly, this part made me laugh. This was like the one I'll give it.
They're like, perestroika never happened.
I will give it to the movie because this part did make me laugh, is the part where they keep getting the phone calls that all the Russian presidents keep dying. Which I thought was quite funny. Like
it's like accidental Iannucci.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. Yeah, it's like Death of Stalin consolidated into like a 3-minute montage of him keep picking up the phone to learn that another Soviet president has had a heart attack. But then it also culminates in like jokes that are basically like, Ronald Reagan is hot and has a big dick, and all these Soviet presidents are like ugly chodes. And I did appreciate that they were like trying to be like, fucking Soviet guys are fucking fat, ugly toads, and Ronald Reagan is like hot.
Well, it's like can't imagine masculine power outside of libidinal forces, right? Because again, it's not about ideology or like political economy. Like he's like, oh, he's the most virile. That's like what matters.
There are a lot of parallels to like modern politics in this. Obviously, I mean, like Reagan is in itself is the entire 80s. I feel like are a parallel to like, I mean, if not a parallel, a precursor, but none more so than like conservatives having to insist that like, not only is our politician, the guy that we like, a great president, like fucking hot too. Because the way conservatives like treat Donald Trump now and like depictions of him, what's that cartoonist guy that would always paint him like glistening?
Ben Garrison.
Ben Garrison. Yeah. It's like
so glad I pulled that out immediately, but struggled with Meryl Streep. Great. This is a good sign for my future brain.
Have that brain rot where they're like, we have to make them hot as shit. And this movie does like lean into that a little bit, especially when they're being like, the Soviets are fucking toads.
Well, they can't imagine a power that isn't coterminous with sexual domination. Like that, it's just impossible to them. And if their figure does not meet that ideal, well, then they don't need the real figure. They need the myth, the representation.
And that is honestly, that is the like thesis of this movie is like, we don't need the facts. We need the myth. We need the myth.
Gita board vindicated once again.
So we're getting, I was going to say we're getting towards the end of this movie. This movie has no beginning, middle, or end. It is a collection of...
It's what's that view? It's a viewfinder.
It is a viewfinder. It is 100% a viewfinder. You could take every scene in this movie, chop it up, rearrange them, put them in different orders, and it's going to be the same movie. Actually, it'd be more interesting.
Do the youth know? Whoa. Okay.
Pulp Fiction, Reagan.
The first thing I was going to
Pulp
say
Fiction, Reagan.
is, do the youth know what a viewfinder is? And then the second thing I was going to say is, what if every time you downloaded or viewed this movie, it changed the ordering? Yes.
That would be awesome. I would love that. Honestly, like a non-linear Reagan movie would have been awesome. Like just, yeah, that would have been great.
What if they spliced altered states together instead of Monkey Man?
Well, Nancy, I think I turned into a monkey. I've turned into a monkey, Nancy. This movie is fucking stupid. And then, okay, so the last third, we're like speed running through the like maybe the not like great parts of Reagan's presidency. And they all in this movie turn out to be whoopsies. Like Iran-Contra is kind of like a come on type thing. I did love that this movie reenacts almost the only mention of Iran-Contra is all of the parts of Reagan's speeches that appear in the song Reagan by Killer Mike.
I was just thinking that
is the only parts of Iran-Contra they address is the we did not sell weapons to the and then we actually did. And that's a my bad on that one. And then it's like, can't you cut a guy a break? And then
you're so close to Harvey.
Harvey Firestein.
Yes, you're like right on the block. You're about to cut down the corner.
But yeah, this movie is fucking trash. We're closing in on the home stretch here, but I do want to talk about the maybe this is insensitive, I don't know, but the way the movie tries to dance around his dementia and his Alzheimer's and the fact that he fucking had dementia and Alzheimer's in office and people hid it. This movie definitely tries to be like, the second he leaves office, gets a little, something doesn't feel right up there. And like they're trying.
He was just a goofball who loved jelly beans.
Yeah, he just loved jelly beans.
That's
and
all.
He just loved walking in the Amazon forest. Oh, wait, hold on. That was our other
that's our
president.
Current president, unfortunately.
But I fucking loved the scene where Nancy makes the Secret Service agent, the one that can ride a horse, which I love. That like there's a whole like bit about that guy. I looked him up and like he had a career beyond this. I didn't know his fucking name, but he had a career beyond this. The like Secret Service agent, the one that knew how to ride a horse. So he was Reagan's like guy back at his ranch house that would be on the horse with him. But Nancy makes.
Did he have a political career or okay? I was like, it's just a career.
No. He had a career in politics after this, but
in horse wrangling.
Honestly, it would have been great. But there is a really funny scene where like Nancy's like, he can't be on a horse no more because he's too stupid, and she makes the Secret Service guy tell him. And I just thought that was a beautiful scene of.
Well, yeah, she's the throat goat, not the truth goat.
And here. A toast to throat goats and truth goats. But this movie is fucking crazy. I would be lying if I say
ugly,
I didn't love
crazy stupid.
I would be lying if I didn't say I loved watching this movie. It is a terrible movie, but this is my bread and butter. I know you feel the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Block it, write it down. I'll sign it. Affidavit. Love it.
Now, before we sign off for this episode, I want to say we have not done Did Armond White like this movie in quite some time.
Yes.
And I thought, well, if there's any movie that Armond White has reviewed and said some really wild shit, I can't find a goddamn word that Armond White has to say about this movie.
Okay, I'm going to start reverse engineering this shit. I'm just going to go look at his, not read them yet, aside from the ones that Mike occasionally reads to me out loud, but go and just read down them and choose what
he did not review Reagan. It is in National Review. It did get a review, a praise review,
by someone
else, not Armond White.
Armand's slacking.
And it is honestly, Armand's got sauce, and whoever this idiot was that reviewed it, sauce.
Nobody does it like Armand. I mean, nobody does it like him.
Nobody can write a beautiful sentence that is the dumbest shit you've ever heard in your life. Nobody can write about film in a way that makes you love movies, and also, is this person okay?
Somebody should call a welfare check on this man surrounded by books.
But yeah, why didn't review this goddamn movie? We might have to wait till his better than list. I
will say one of the things that hasn't been relevant yet, but that I will miss about not having Twitter, is that if you tweet about Armond White,
he will respond.
He will like it and sometimes respond.
I have done it from this very podcast Twitter account where I sarcastically was like, Armond, we love you. And he was like, thank you for the shout out.
Yes.
he is on
more
there.
than one time he's responded to things that I've said about him in relation to the pod. So, pour one out for that experience.
Do you think we could be like,
I'm not ready for that.
Do you think he's like that?
I don't think we're ready for that. He's a very smart man. I'm not trying to go toe to toe with him verbally out loud,
either, but
in the moment.
Still, I mean, like I would look like an idiot to be able to talk to Armond White for a minute.
That's what I'm saying. He's a smart man that I disagree with very strongly.
He would not because he's right.
I do not have courage.
Not because he's right, but because he's smart and intelligent and evil, he would fucking destroy me in any sort of conversation. But I welcome that, honestly. I would love that.
It's a funny proposal, I'll tell you that.
So Armin, we know you're listening.
A modest proposal, but
Armin, we know you're listening. Please come talk to us.
At minimum, please review Reagan.
Yes, please. Well, do you have anything else to say about Reagan, the 2024 film by Sean McNamara, director of Soul Surfer?
The way that DQ holds his mouth in this movie is...
I did not say
unrestrained, or rather it's quite restrained, but it is deranged and unrestrained in its derangement.
Okay, I'm going to pull up my quotes.
It's a dialectic.
So I can read this to you for verbatim now that you've said this, but I said, when Dennis Quaid smiles, he looks like one of the people in the Smile movies. Smile, like
he also looks like in the other movie that he was in this year, The Substance, like how Monster Elizasu, his smile is like the scar tissue is like pulling back his face, really taunt in one direction.
Yeah.
He looks like a plastic surgeon did half of his face and forgot. He looks like a stroke caught him sideways. It's an odd choice. It's an odd acting choice.
In The Substance, there's a lot of like, he's supposed to be like a gross, disgusting character, like a just gross, disgusting human. So a lot of times he's shot in like extreme close up, almost like a fisheye, like lens, where he's just
or like slightly from below.
Yeah, where he's just supposed to look like warped and fucked up. And I feel like this movie, they're doing that without the camera tricks. He's just always looking like a fucking weirdo, rubber faced nut job.
They do shoot him from slightly below for a lot of the movie, I assume, in an effort to kind of like deify, make him look tall and like, but it does have a
haunting,
ghastly effect. Ghastly effect.
But yeah. Well, do we have any other thoughts on Reagan?
Nope. And well,
I will say, not my least favorite movie of the year.
I don't know. I gotta think about that.
I can't at this point. We have a month and a half left. I cannot see anything beating Unfrosted for the title, because I hate
strong to that
Unfrosted so much. But do we want to say what our next movie is going to be?
Well, how about we just say we're going to cover 2 movies on drag, because maybe we don't know what order we do them in because we haven't scheduled.
Sounds good. Yeah.
One of them, but we're going to cover 2 films about the history of drag.
And we're back to good ones.
Yes.
No more shitty movies that I love.
Deep sigh.
Well, I guess with that, just continuing your deep sigh, we'll get you on the next one.
Bye-bye.